Right. Well, so welcome to this inaugural meeting on community currencies in Cosmos. And today's call is really just kicking this initiative off. Most of us kind of know each other, and some of us have worked together for quite a while. And so today's partly about just kind of reintroducing ourselves so we can form the core of this community and start the collaboration with sort of specific intent towards what we're wanting to build out over the coming years. And then the agenda for today is pretty open. So you've all seen the Miro board, and some of you have commented on that, which provides a kind of landscaping skeleton view of the landscape for us all to kind of add our wisdom to that and our information. And so we can be guided by that. But I think, oh yes, I'll share the link to the Miro. But I think let's get going just by kicking off with a short introduction, just introducing yourself, and particularly, I guess, your specific interest in this area, and maybe just something about like what got you interested in community currencies. Like, just what was that spark, that thing back in your past that created this interest, and for some people here, you know, passion, a kind of career in this space. Shall we, let's just go from left to right here on my screen. I've got Chris, I've got you first there, and let's just make a quick round of introductions.
Yeah, I'm Chris G. With Shanghai City. You'll be meeting my buddy Tat, who's going to join in a minute. Yeah, basically, community currencies was introduced to us actually through Shaun Conway and Wil Ruddick at some point in our lives. Oh, there's my partner Tat. And we've been working in social development for the past 10 years. Our entry point was actually through urban planning and architecture and architectural urban research, doing urban data projects. And we started flipping that and doing that kind of data research for villages. That kind of translated towards doing impact measurement, which is actually how we met Shaun, got interested in blockchain, and then eventually we were interested in development finance for all the projects we're working on and how blockchain can actually start transforming that for the kinds of people that we're working with. We work in China, Southeast Asia, and that's where we are now. Right now, we're working in Hong Kong, building an impact measurement data consortium, and then also working on some community currency projects, most notably time banks, for a whole bunch of different organizations across Hong Kong. And maybe I'll just pass it on to Tat now that he joined. Tat, just introduce yourself and how we got involved in community currencies, but I kind of told half the story. You can tell the other half.
Yeah, so everybody, this is Tat, co-founder with Chris for Shanghai City. So, I mean, I would just maybe spend like 30 seconds to talk about the community currency projects. Basically, there are around 14 communities in Hong Kong having community currencies, and the majority of them are organized by NGOs. And they're all solving poverty issues. So basically, the majority of them started in 2008 because of the Asian financial tsunami. Like everybody lose their job. So basically, they start community currency at that time. So what we're actually doing right now is that since 2019, we try to digitize 4 of those communities. And currently, we're still working with these 4, but we are scaling up to the rest of the 14. And Hong Kong Council of Social Service is building an exchange. So basically, all the different communities, like the elderly communities, the family communities, the child communities. So basically, they can actually start to create more liquidities on that level. So basically, I think that's very much on the top-down, a way to look at that. So there is a local bank and then a family office basically funding this endeavor for the time exchange. On the other hand, there is a bunch of social enterprises. They all want to create a community currency kind of scheme. So basically try to help their business engaging with communities like urban farming, like ecotourism, like all of those. Basically, on the other hand, there is a fund in Hong Kong called, Hong Kong Social Innovation and Entrepreneurship Fund. It's actually funded from government. So basically, this program is on their social innovations program. So basically, I think that's like what we're actually doing in Hong Kong, and we're also scaling that to Taiwan and and some other countries in South Asia. Yeah.
Do you want to just pass the baton on so we can get the next person to speak?
So the next guy next to me is Blair.
Hey everyone, I'm an engineer. I work with Wil at Grassroots Economics. I've kind of newer to the blockchain space, been around for about a year. I have a background in natural resource economics and done some software engineering. And so community currencies seem like a great way to kind of combine the two. So it's kind of the track I'm on. I'll pass to Benjamin Simatos.
Hello. So my background, I come more from finance and economics, as a training. In the past years, I was involved with IOV Starname, which is a Cosmon project, and I was designing like token economics. So I spent a lot of time thinking about it. So I left the project, and I've been like reading a lot about how to like design currency and token for communities. And through this process, I got in touch with Shaun, who was also part of the Cosmos ecosystem. And we got to talk. He introduced me to Wil, and so I got here. So I'm in touch also with different universities to try to who are interested maybe to start launching their community currency as well, and train to develop a developer able to help. So I'm really looking forward to be involved in this discussion in the design part and implementation. I'm based in Paris. I've been in touch with local currencies in Paris, but in developed country, like the issues are quite different, and maybe not the same solution will apply. Next to me would be Jeff.
Hey, everybody. Great to see so many bright minds in the same place working on the same issues. For me, universal basic income is kind of this like what it all boils down to. It's like I've seen it described as like liquid infrastructure, like money can turn into the things we need. So if we just give people money, then they can get the things they need from the markets and supporting local markets rather than bringing in, clothes or food or whatever else and decimating these local markets like traditional kind of development aid. I think it's also the best way that we can value people's humanity by saying, you are a human, we recognize, we value that, and you can go and do the things in your day that you find important, whether that's raising a family or taking care of the elderly, or just playing video games, or whatever you want. And I think this is also the best tool that we can get the world to slow down. I think that's a lot of people say, oh, if we give money to everybody, then they'll just be lazy. Great. We need less people traveling. We need less people doing stuff. We need more people, in being content with what they have and where they are. And I think that's a great way to, improve or draw down, sort of our ecosystemic overshoot. So I'm here from the Common Stack, and I guess Block Science as well. The Common Stack is working to build modular components for DAO ecosystems and beyond DAOs into commons. So taking these from these kind of like cold hyper-financial coordination tools to human-centered, purpose-driven, appropriately incentive-aligned systems. So that's what we're working on at the Common Stack. And Block Science kind of brings the complex systems engineering, design, modeling, simulation, validation to that effort. I also just wanted to note I've got a hard stop at half an hour, unfortunately, so I'll have to jump then. But really excited to see this initiative spinning up, and really happy to contribute from both of those organizations as needed. And I'll pass it to my right is Greg Lendua.
Hey everyone! Wow, what an awesome crew! Excited for this. So yeah, I mean, my journey with complementary and community currencies, I think, really started back in 2008. I helped organize just sort of serendipitously with the financial crash helped organize a pretty big event called the Financial Permaculture course. And we got together a bunch of local businesses and local leaders, and we were trying to do a participatory design process to reinvigorate this rural Tennessee town. And we had a bunch of folks who'd been working with Bernard Lietaer and Margaret Kennedy involved, and there was just a lot of activity around how to create local currency. And so from that point, sort of 2007, 2008, I got pretty deep into the whole LETs and time banking and just a lot of different things. I helped start a currency on the online university I was attending, Gaia University. We started like a learning credit system. So lots of experimentation back then. And then fast forward, I co-founded Regen Network, and our aim is really actually if you sort of like zoom out a little bit, what we're really trying to do is, and kind of the central thread of my exploration here has been how to link currency issuance and governance and value to ecological regeneration and social health. And so how to create the right mechanisms so that there's transparency and sort of appropriate mechanisms so that simply by spending, saving, engaging economically, communities are actually statistically and on average tending to create more regenerative ecological outcomes through how they're engaging. And so that's taken us at Regen Network on a whole journey around, digital monitoring, reporting, and verification, carbon markets, and other things. But underpinning all of that has always been the desire actually to have this land into diverse local currency systems, not some crazy sort of like carbon market. But that's our sort of like intervention right now to learn, to grow, to make sure there's financial flow, and to sort of like keep everything moving. So that's me. I'm really excited to be here, and honored to be with all of you. Maybe I'll pass it over to Wil.
Hey guys. So I think everybody here pretty much knows me. Wil Ruddick, the founder of Grassroots Economics, and I guess what got me excited about this stuff way back when was I was doing agent-based modeling and little Fourier transforms with respect to like Forex data, and this was like me hating my life as a physicist and getting into economics. And then I read Bernard Lietaer's book, and it was just like, oh, people make money, and it was just like, that realization, just like, oh, we made all this shit. And so like the idea that there could be this multiverse of currencies that could all work together, and these sort of ecosystems of value and all this kind of stuff kind of filtered in through his work. And then I started really studying it for, I don't know, about 10 years, even before I came to Kenya. And now it's just, we've done a lot of little proofs of concept of just, villages creating essentially producer credit, promissory notes against their future production, with lots of different iterations and trials and network tokens and bonding curves and all kinds of different stuff. I think we've thrown the whole kitchen sink at it. And I think we've got some basic, templates and things that work pretty good in village settings and urban and whatnot. And Red Cross and a lot of these other guys seem to think so too, and they like the data coming out of it and things like this. And so we've kind of, we've gotten a green light to go ahead with a lot of different organizations. Like GIZ is doing the biggest kind of push right now in Cameroon with their quite a big project, and ICRC, like the military Red Cross, is pushing these out with internally displaced people. And there's just a lot of support. I see Lohan here. We've been talking with UNICEF quite a bit, and hopefully we'll do a pilot soon. And a lot of focus has also been pushed toward the data, the impact data itself. And so moving towards impact claims, and how do we actually say what's good about these to the government, or anyone who's interested in looking at them. How do we validate those claims that, we saw $3 million of trade last year of tokens moving around in value, but what does that really mean? and yeah, we've gotten a group of devs here. We've got Lewis, I think he's still here, and Blair and a few others, and a lot of interest and a lot of like kind of demand from the humanitarian space that we haven't been able to handle ourselves. I mean, we're just, we've been plugging away for about a year at sort of relaunching a code base, and we're about done with that. And there's a lot of little features and getting into impact claims. And so having a community around this space is super, super necessary and important. And happy to be here with everybody. Also very excited about like the carbon markets, and like we've been focusing a lot on agroforestry and regenerative agriculture, and using the currencies to support that work of regenerative agriculture. So I think all of us here, I think, are in a really, it's a cool synergy. So happy to be with everybody here. I'll pass to Lewis because I mentioned him. You still hear Lewis?
Hello.
You're good.
Yeah. Okay,
yeah.
cool. Yeah, hello. I'm Lewis Holbrook. I've been working with grassroots economics for, I guess, 1.5 years now. Last 9 months or so being spent on basically rewriting the system for the Sarafu currency in Kenya. Hopefully, we'll be launching this in a matter of double-digit days. My background is all sorts of stuff, also non-computing related, but my entry into the cryptocurrency space was 4 years ago through a project called Swarm, the decentralized storage layer for Ethereum, which incidentally just recently launched to their mainnet. Once we have launched our custodial wallet system for Sarafu, I guess I'll be turning my attention towards implementing decentralized storage, backends, peer-to-peer networking layer, start of that, and also looking into integrations with stuff like Tendermint and so on and so forth. I don't know what else to say. Maybe I can pass. Sorry, I didn't. I'm kind of busy, so I was listening on half an ear here. I'm not sure who went, but maybe Marie or Jessica. Marie, maybe.
Yep. So thanks, Lewis. I'm Marie Leaf, and I just recently joined Informal with Ethan to work on figuring out mapping out the landscape of local currencies, mutual credit systems, and impact as a whole, and mapping out how the Cosmos SDK and the Cosmos ecosystem can either support or needs to grow functionally. So I'm still early days, just getting used to the Cosmos SDK, looking at some of the grassroots code and just figuring out what pieces need to go where. And my introduction to local currencies, this conversation is really exciting for me because I've studied local currencies a lot in theory, but haven't had the opportunity to actually, work with people in the field. I have a degree in development economics, so we studied a lot about like silo residuals and curves about how an economy grows, and given land, labor, capital being equal, what are the factors that really differentiate how a local or community grows? And technology, it always comes down to technology. At least that's what I was studying back then. And I graduated also around the 2008 financial crisis. And I think that really was a wake-up call for questioning what money is and how it's become divorced from its initial usage, which is trust, and trust in the system that you'll have liquidity and so on and so forth. I'm sure all of you share my sentiments. And so I just started thinking of like, what are ways different representations of currencies that could actually help a community grow. So I've been following local currency development, reading same books, and yeah, so I'm really excited to be here and learn about how like everyone's interacting and trying to pair up the carbon credits and social impact with like actual currencies. So yeah, that's me. I'll pass it off to Ethan.
Hey guys, Ethan here, co-founder of the Cosmos project. I guess on the current local currency front, I mean, the Cosmos was initially motivated by the blockchain, problems we were seeing in the blockchain space in 2016. But the reason I was in the blockchain space in the first place was sort of related to my background in biophysics and the problem of sustainability and sort of understanding organisms as sustainable systems and how to expand that into our socioeconomic systems, and coming to think about money as sort of a information kind of medium that represents information about the real world, and starting to realize how poorly money today does that, and the need for more local forms of money that can do that better. And I read, Bernard Lietaer's book I think in 2017, and I haven't been able to shut up about local currencies since then. So excited to finally see a group like this coming together and to be able to put this blockchain tech to its real ultimate intended use case, which I think is local currencies. I will pass it to Jessica.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, it's so interesting to hear all of the different experience and backgrounds here. For me, I come from an investigative journalism and political science background. I ended up in crypto in 2014, worked with some environmental projects, looking at how to incentivize plastics recycling. Yeah, and have done various work and landed at the nexus of a lot of different ecosystems, particularly in the token engineering space. And my first introduction to complementary and community currencies was actually through Wil's paper. So that's not necessarily my background, but I guess what I've been doing is kind of building DAOs and looking at ecosystem value flows and incentive mechanisms. And another shout out for UBI is it seems there's UBI is still always comes up as the seemingly best solution in a lot of those contexts. And I guess I'm incredibly interested to get a little more into this wormhole in the sense of permaculture economics, because I do see that this is kind of the mycelial network connections that are going to connect all of what we're doing in Web3 and kind of the virtual ethereal realms and bring it down to the earth. And I think complementary currencies is the key way that we're going to be able to connect these two worlds. And I think working in Web3, I still get a little frustrated because, for example, in Canada, they're cutting down all the old growth. And I just think we just need to launch, old growth NFTs, and there's all of these different mechanisms. There's so many different regenerative funding mechanisms. So we just now have to weave the threads, connect the dots to get this stuff to actually help in the real world. And I know Wil is kind of at the center, you're at the center of doing all this, and we need so many more resources to be doing this. And I also worked for a protocol project and kind of see this completely liquid worldwide network of independently valued currencies that can become fractal to just get the money water to flow and water all of these things that are going on. So I feel like this group is incredible, and I really look forward to the work that comes out of this to be able to make this happen, and excited to see how we can start to weave the threads to like really coordinate and leverage all of the resources and networks that we have to put this to task. So thanks, Shaun, for initiating, and everybody for sharing, and nice to meet you, those that I haven't. And I guess I'll pass to Reiki, who jumped in here.
Hey, thanks for that. What an incredible group of humans. Calls like these, and I really think we are going to make it, even with all the crazy reports. My name's Reiki. I'm probably here because of my last 4 years I've been working on this thing called Seeds. Some of you might have heard about it. It's trying to rethink how we can scale coordination to build regenerative economies. My passion with local currencies and community systems comes from more of a permaculture background. My real passion is in plants, plant intelligence, plant communication, ecosystem health, regenerative gardening, a la permaculture. And, you know, going through those systems, you start thinking in terms of systems and how, you know, systems interrelate with other systems and, you know, systems all the way down. So when I was thinking about how to approach climate change, you realize that the source of climate change is our economy. It's what's driving behaviors and incentives. So if we're going to solve this climate crisis that we're facing right now, I think we needed to have different types of economic systems, different ways to coordinate and exchange value. And this is where I think currencies come in, because they're just the mediums of exchange. When you start changing the mediums of the exchange, you can start changing how the exchanges happen. And start rethinking what an economic system could look like and how it could serve our planet and serve communities. So that's what I'm, you know, most interested in, is, you know, how we can all come together to build a different type of economic system that's, you know, regenerative by design. I think community currencies play a big part in that, but I also think we need some type of global coordination systems as well to take on things like the, you know, Great Pacific Garbage Patch and making our rivers drinkable again, and reversing desertification, and all these things that humanity really needs that are beyond the scope of a community currency. So that's what I'm kind of really interested in, is how we can get these like federated communities to come together and start coordinating at scale, to start redesigning, you know, whole types of economic systems. So yeah, that's the perspective I'm bringing to all of this. I think this group is incredible. Thanks, Shaun, for putting it all together. And I will pass it to Jeff.
Jeff's been ready. So Lohan, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll go. Hi, everyone. My name is Lohan Spies. I've known Shaun for quite a while, and I'm really coming from my background is in cybersecurity. And I started working in the blockchain space in around 2015. And currently I'm the founder of DIDX, and we are building a platform together with UNICEF. Well, not UNICEF is a partner in the platform, but we are building a platform to provide youth across Africa with self-sovereign identities, and then to provide them with learning opportunities so that they can participate and get rewarded for participation and successful completion of these challenges, which are then basically added to their CV that they can then utilize to access earning opportunities. So we call it the learning to earning journey. And so my kind of view of this is a lot from the self-sovereign identity perspective. But as we are building out YOMA and the platform, we identified that we need currencies and we need incentive mechanisms in the platform. And together with the next kind of evolution of YOMA, what we are going to build is called Green YOMA. We want to move that also into the sustainable development space. So we are looking at building a universal, we call it the universal YOMA token, and then linking that to community currencies to actually feed the value right from the people who create the value right down into the communities and potentially back up again. So I'm coming from it really from utilizing all this technology from the people, the technology and the ideas from everyone in the room, and actually applying it and putting it to work and seeing how it functions by utilizing the youth on the platform.
Excellent. Thanks, Lohan. I think we've just got Sheldon left. Sheldon's just recently joined the IXO team. So do you want to say hi quickly, Sheldon, and then can wrap up the introductions?
Hey everyone, Sheldon here. I'm excited to be here. Just recently joined the IXO team. Yeah, excited to learn from all of you. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Great, thanks, Sheldon. So maybe I'll just quickly say a thing or two about kind of my interest in this. So I guess the one side is ideology and the other side is technology. And so on the ideology side, my background is in health. I'm an ex-doctor, worked in global health and particularly in the HIV response, and have had this idea about a biomimetic design for a digital immune system for humanity, so a sense and response system. And I think there's some really interesting and cool analogies between currencies and the sort of immunoglobulins components of the immune system that enable us to potentiate or to aggregate or to amplify. So these antibodies can make all this stuff happen at a localized level, have really sort of been emboldened, I guess, in that idea over the past 2 years with COVID. And one of the big applications that we're currently collaborating on is currencies used in incentive schemes around COVID sense and response. So that's something that we'll be further iterating on and hopefully making some announcements about quite soon. On the technology side, started sort of around 2008 as well, trying to actually find some technologies that could work in implementing some local currency schemes. And I started with Cyclos. I think some of you might be familiar with that, a sort of a community ledger system, and that just didn't cut it. And then from 2014, we started building on Ripple because we thought, community currencies would probably crash the Bitcoin network. And then Ethereum, and then onto Cosmos. And so having kind of experienced the limitations all along the way, I'm particularly interested in seeing how we can now use the advances that we have, both in sort of core network technologies and at the application layer and so on. And I think Cosmos is a great place to make that happen. And so we're really, through this approach, are trying to pull together a movement of people in this ecosystem directed towards this vision of an internet of blockchains, which is purposed towards sustainability and regeneration. And so today's call is partly about kind of connecting the people who have been working in this space, and then also starting to look at what are the systems, what are the networks, and what are the processes that we can start engaging in that are going to enable us to put some sort of fast track and accelerate the developments in this space. And so on that note, my intention in this meeting was really to convene, not so much to kind of take the lead here. Wil is our lead from a programmatic sense. So we've got like 20 minutes left. And so I thought maybe in the second part of this call, we should direct our attention towards the Miro map, which is really just a skeleton for starters, which gives us some sense of the landscape that we're operating in. On the right-hand side, really focusing on networks, because I guess we all support the belief that networks are kind of really what will drive the scale and adoption and spread of ideas and so on. And so we've got different types of networks on the right, and on the left we've got systems and capabilities and definitions and so on. I think what's going to be particularly interesting for us in this process, this working group process, is to really get down to a practical and specific set of understandings around what will be the interchain enablers for these systems. And so down the bottom left here, we've got just some starting points here of a mapping of the kinds of things that we could potentially see from a Cosmos ecosystem and from an Interchain Foundation perspective that we could be directing our attention and our energy towards. So on that note, I want to maybe just hand over to Wil, just to maybe, Wil, can you provide us kind of with your entry point to this map and just a sense of kind of where you see us going with this working group process? It's a large landscape that's mapped out here, and it would be great to get a sense of, okay, what are the priorities for what this group can be doing, and what's going to kind of get the most effect in the shortest time possible with the resources and time we have available. So Will, over to you to kind of take a first stab at that, and then please anyone else, chip in.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, from our point of view with grassroots economics, like there's, we've got kind of a set of deliverables over the next kind of 2 years that we're sort of looking at. So, when I'm looking at this stuff, I'm looking at, for instance, like, in the top left in terms of like the types of currencies. I mean, we're not in any way sort of like pegged into, like, community inclusion currencies is a pretty broad concept. And essentially, we like the idea of producer credits, but more than anything, just having currencies that are consciously attached to some type of a claim, and whether or not that's just the smart contract they're built on itself, but ideally there's a lot more to it than that. And so articulating that sort of claim, that space around, the definitions of these types of currencies, whether or not it's a farming group that's creating a currency against the future production of their land, as well as carbon credits, versus a church creating a time bank, or a municipality creating credit against taxation, for instance, and wanting that, like, to recirculate as a medium of exchange. So I in terms of just coming up with typologies that we can define quite well, and define them around some sort of claims or NFT-esque kind of articulation on a blockchain, I think is quite useful. And I think that sort of process will sort of it definitely helps us sort of articulate what are those, like, the use cases and the different models that need to go with those. In terms of, like, I'm just going to go through these a little bit, like in terms of like the concepts, where we've gone from, in terms of like automated market makers, like we were working with Bancor for some time there, and nowadays we kind of see these things as sort of third party, that a currency, a group may issue a currency that has some kind of bonding curves attached to it, but quite often those can be third party situations where connecting between currencies can happen on a decentralized exchange, like liquidity pools and different types of liquidity pools. And there's just, there's a lot of research ongoing right now around just using the data that we've been sort of recording over the past few years on blockchain. That's a really big, and like, as we get more and more research out there that shows the impacts of these things, that means more and more of like the humanitarian spaces and other spaces are starting to take notice and use them. And I feel like we're getting to a bit of critical mass there, and there's a few research papers coming out quite soon. And so, in general, I like the idea that, with the Interchain community, if we're looking at platforms and what are those basic building blocks and sort of primitive concepts that we all need in all of our systems together, and sort of mapping out, what are, where do we fit in terms of sort of this ecosystem, I think that would be useful as well. But let me just pause for a minute and see, maybe do a round of people's thoughts. Over.
Are you thinking of a goal to kind of have some template that would become a bit of a standard or replicable, so that the systems are operating on similar composable, like, mechanisms? Or I guess, how do you envision that these, are you looking more at the primitive level to where we identify some and then they're composable in various ways? I guess what would be the thing that you're optimizing for?
Sure. From my point of view, we've got, a certain demographic of communities that want these programs, and from, in urban cities to rural areas with different types of partners. And it's basically just creating packages for all of those guys, and doing it in a way where we can basically service, so I see grassroots economics, for instance, as just a piece of a service provider among this space. And I think we all can provide different levels of that in different areas, right? So like, with Gregory focusing on, regenerative agriculture from a certain perspective, for instance, and, Chris and Tat, focusing on impact measurements and Southeast Asia, and there's regionality also attached to it. And then, so I'm more of like a application driven, and I just want to have a bunch of products that we can push out there and promote. And, and I want those to be built in a way that I can, we can stand behind them. And, for me also, like with grassroots economics, there's a lot of like making sure that there's the least amount of sort of rent seeking as possible, like that there's a language that we can present. For me, it's the humanitarian sector. I'm not necessarily opposed to things like proof of stake and whatnot around those, but it's just, being able to describe those things in a way that's palatable, and that, we can sort of be able to sort of undercut the competition, in other words, as well, that we can present something that is as pure as possible. And I like that ethos around Cosmos is kind of that to me. It's this, cut out the crap. We don't need these massive centralized blockchains necessarily. They're good for certain things maybe. And we can create a bunch of applications around this stuff. So I'm more focused on just like, picking off applications and coming up with frameworks where we can all sort of use the results of that, whether that's, open source modules, back end stuff, and just, sharing information about all this stuff, and just making sure that like, it's super, like if someone's running a productivity tool and they want to create a currency on it, it would be the simplest thing possible to look at these frameworks and say, okay, I can integrate into that quite easily. So like APIs and things like that, versus like a municipality coming out and saying, I want to create one of these systems, or humanitarian space want to create these systems. And yeah.
One thing that I think would be really fantastic for this working group to produce be a set of specifications based on some specific use cases that really feels like we can be empowering communities with their own tools, zero rent seeking. They can spin up their own security, they can define their own parameters, they can govern their own currencies, and just really being precise about understanding what the specifications are, so that this can be one of the core sort of user groups that the Cosmos SDK maintaining team is sourcing specifications from, and really understanding if our team maintaining Cosmos SDK has that dialed, right? That has exactly what the Cosmos SDK needs to be able to do to be performant and secure for this use case. And of course, this use case will also have its own custom modules, but there's quite a bit of sort of interdependency there. So that's just sort of a desire I have, is if there can be sort of strong specification coming back and getting fed into the SDK maintainership process, I think that would be a big win and help accelerate and ensure that the sort of the base layer here of whatever sovereign blockchain is being used has the attributes that are needed.
Yeah, I like the idea of case studies, because I guess that's kind of what my question is about. Is it's such a massive design landscape. So I think identifying what you're saying, Greg, some case studies, and I think also there are just so many pieces and Legos to play with. So I guess what the Commons Stack did that was good was say, hey, here's a framework. Okay, you have a funding mechanism, you have a governance, governance tools, you have a dashboard or something like this. So this concept was actually maybe more powerful than what we've actually built. And actually, there's OneHive probably has the most functional DAO, if that's what you want, but maybe people don't want a DAO. So I guess we can look at existing patterns that are maybe on Ethereum, and then look at what are the best ofs to spec this out on Cosmos. And also, yeah, I mean, the OneHive model has continuous issuance, whereas the Commons Stack new pattern will have augmented bonding curve plus conviction voting. Also, I've been chatting with Luke about developing portable conviction voting. I've also been chatting with Reiki and Greg about this as well. So I think just looking at what are the best ofs on Ethereum, what are some use cases, and Greg, I like your approach of kind of speccing that out. Otherwise, it's like we have all these Legos on the floor, and unless we have some directive purpose or I guess, optimization setting, then it will be more challenging, I think, to create from that versus the suggestion by Greg.
Yeah, I think that the flip side of that, of specifications, is the rubrics around how we evaluate what the technology does or what the solutions do. So being explicit about like what are the criteria, how do we all understand those criteria? So we throw around a lot of terminology, whether it's sovereignty or non-rent seeking or whatever. But what do we all mean by that? And if we have some common language around that and some common rubrics around how we're able to evaluate it, then we've got, on the one side, the specifications producing what's needed to be implemented, and on the other side, we've got criteria against which we can make decisions about, which is whether those products achieve the requirements and the purpose or whatever the criteria are that we want to define as being the core criteria for these systems and for the systems at a sort of operational level, but also and an economic level, but also at a technological level. I wonder, because we've got the opportunity of Ethan being on the call, Ethan, if you would like to kind of maybe give your vision, with Interchain Foundation being a sponsor of this and you personally being very supportive and passionate about it, what do you see the role of the foundation and the working group and what can be done in an Interchain context?
I guess, yeah, thanks. I mean, that's a super broad question. I think what I'm trying, my understanding of what we're trying to do is basically, I don't know much about the work you guys are doing in Hong Kong, but I know a bit more about what Wil is doing. And so for me, it's like, well, that model seems to be working. Let's spread that and try to get that kind of system in as many jurisdictions as possible. I've also been sort of lit up by Thomas Fleischmann's paper earlier this year about liquidity saving and sort of positioning all this stuff, not so much as like alternative currency or complementary currency, which is language that kind of, maybe makes people think, oh, this is kind of a little gimmick, or like, oh, this is nice. These people aren't doing anything like truly transformative. It's just like a little thing on the side. And that's kind of the space that I think a lot of these initiatives have operated in. But I think what Grassroots is kind of proving, and what also Sardex is kind of proving, is that and the point this liquidity saving paper was trying to make was like, hey, actually these are mechanisms that have been used by financial institutions for a long time and actually underpin our whole financial system. And what we're simply talking about here is expanding that to everyday businesses. And so thinking about this less as like complementary currencies, quote unquote, and more as like taking existing well understood mechanisms like credit clearing and even say producer credits or mutual credit, and expanding access to that, and sort of empowering existing institutions that are struggling from economies of scale, like credit unions and say small banks in the US and stuff like that, to actually be able to leverage this stuff and sort of push back against the global finance. I don't know if that was particularly coherent, but just seeing the success, there's been a lot of, let's say, failed complementary currency projects. My partner's actually about to publish a piece on sort of this. And so I think there's a lot of, I don't know, maybe a lot of people are jaded about these kinds of projects, but it seems that most of those projects are kind of like, reserve backed, kind of more gimmicky, let's say local currency things, whereas the mutual credit projects and the credit clearing projects that actually tap into small businesses really do seem to have some legs and the potential to scale. So maybe focusing more on those and those, kind of medium of exchange functions of money, let's say, than the sort of store of value functions of money might be, might be able to have some real legs and actually, so that's sort of what I'm seeing. And I don't have much on the ground experience either. I've just been privileged enough to be able to sort of wade into this and, have backing from the ICF and being able to try to direct that. So, yeah, but like, I guess what I would like to see if we were to set like 5-year results or something is, we currently have, say, tens of thousands of users in Kenya. Let's get tens of thousands of users in, 50 countries, in each of 50 countries, kind of thing, on these local mutual credit systems.
I can pin in there. I want to mention the idea that, like, there's the humanitarian space in terms of like going into villages or working with, IDPs, but in terms of like really like getting to the critical mass of like medium to large scale businesses, that's really just starting in a way. And they're seeing, like sort of the wealth of these networks built by Red Cross. I mean, we don't even do most of our own implementation anymore. It's all being done by Red Cross, but that's just starting. So like allowing larger businesses to accept a community currency as a tax write-off and having Red Cross write that tax receipt, that charitable giving receipt. Those kinds of things are really huge. And so we're just starting to tap into that market. And I know a lot of you guys are more from that space. In Ilohan in South Africa, like tapping into, the what do they call it? Sorry, I'm a little bit brain dead right now, but the charitable giving for corporations, and all that stuff is just kind of starting right now. And so I think that, we've got a lot of insurance companies and loaning companies that also want to utilize the data as a way to de-risk loans and de-risking crop insurance, right? So to give lower premiums, right? So those are all very specific products, and almost all of them require this layer of authenticity of validated claims, right? It's a really key component that I think is totally missing in much of the community currency space and even sort of the monetary space. Like how would you compare Bitcoin as a currency compared to the US dollar compared to a local currency? And so I think that's another space where I think we can, there's a huge margin of improvement because there's almost nothing in that space. It doesn't even exist. Like really, measuring the value of a currency and the impact of a currency actually is like, we have measurements like GDP, and that's about it for the entire world, right now. And so I think that's a really key thing. Like, what is that currency that you just built? Define it. And quite often they're so poorly defined. And at best, maybe on blockchain, we've got a smart contract. And, so if we're using an augmented bonding curve or whatever, like that, those claims, that piece of it, articulating that really well in a way that other organizations can really understand and digest. So this level of kind of having marketplaces that are consuming this data. So like Lohan was talking about, like UNICEF wants to reward people for certain things. They want to reward people, for instance, for potentially using a community currency. Well, they have to know what that is, right? Like there's so little in that world around impacts that I think that's a huge point for growth. So I don't want to sort of, with Ethan, I don't want you to think that like we've solved the problem. I think we've gotten some very good examples of like a village creating a 1-acre farm, and there's a token against that 1-acre farm's production, and it circulates to haircuts and school fees, and people are now using, because they trust that they're going to get food back for it. Like, okay, we've made a little voucher system that circulates. That's about as good as we've done as grassroots economics. And we've made that kind of scale all over the place and with different sort of like techniques and methods. Like we've done a lot of airdrops and, SMS campaigns and Red Cross and that sort of stuff. But like, ultimately it's about trust, and it's about, like actually defining those claims really well. So, I don't want to lick my own popsicle too much here. Like there's a lot that we need to do, and yeah, I'll pause there.
I think I want to just add to that, that don't undersell yourself, because that's a big thing. I think from what I've been gathering about these community currencies is they run into a lot of issues because they're paper issued. It takes a ton of overhead of people auditing the system, just counting what's in supply. And my theory is that we don't know enough about the efficacy of them because it's all paper, right? I mean, it's not all paper, but for the most part, a lot of the currencies don't have these analytics and don't have an ability to trace these impacts. So I think what's really exciting about the Fleischman paper is that we have all the data, we have the, we can break it down, slice it by type of industry, type of SME, and we can optimize on that, and we could show with results how much liquidity we're saving. So if we could build some sort of like liquidity saving module that plugs in with this whole, I really like this idea of packages, and you can kind of just based on your locality and what you want to achieve. Say you want small businesses to stay afloat. So you we have to figure out some sort of way of building, capital controls or a membership system on top of the staking system. That's the sort of questions I've been thinking about right now. But yeah, I just wanted to add that. I see we're coming up on 2 minutes.
Yeah, just to tag on that, like the idea of credit clearing, like, so just so that you've got this community currency doesn't mean that it's going to become balanced, right? Like, Marie's might end up with all of it. And so demurrage is another tool that we use, right? So negative interest and things like that, redistributions. But the Fleischman's version of like having credit clearing algorithms that help, like match things together, I think in some spaces that makes a lot of sense. And I think, like the marketplaces in general are super lacking. So having peer-to-peer marketplaces. So like we've got really like a text-based directory system that needs to be rebuilt, but that, is ideally searchable and whatnot, but we need much, much better marketplaces. And we're starting to move into places that have much, much more internet as well. So like Hong Kong, for instance, shouldn't probably be using USSD. You guys already have marketplaces and cool apps that you're dealing with. So that's another piece. So like credit clearing mechanisms, different, modalities for clearing credit. I love that articulation too. I'm not attached to sort of community currencies necessarily either. I feel like it does get a lot of backlash, although that's starting to change a little bit. So yeah, I definitely, those two things, how to clear credits, and also just, the market, ideally, the better the market is, the more it is just naturally clearing, right? Like, in a really good market, we like Maria needs leaves from Tat, and Tat's got, fish, and what I mean? Like we can actually create these sort of pathfinding markets and things like that, that's also really super powerful. Yeah, over.
Excellent. So we're on the top of the hour. I think we all have a sense that there's a moment in time, a lot of things coming together, whether that's sort of at a global kind of political policy level, the UN Task Force on Digital Finance for the Sustainable Development Goals with its People's Money report last year, and really emphasizing the importance of the role of how people choose to transact in the economy, where they invest their money, if they have money to invest, or they have any other forms of capital to invest, which includes time and so on, where people choose to, how people choose to spend their money, what they choose to purchase, etc. It's, these are really important driving forces, and so we've got the political environment in which this is really the perfect time. We've got the economic circumstances, and we've got the technologies, I think, now coming into a phase of maturation where we can actually really do this stuff. So the suggestion I would like to make for the next steps, Will, I think you'll kind of continue to lead on this working group process. We have this map, and I would encourage everyone to come and add your contributions to that, just really to help articulate the landscape. Also use the Miro board just to paste anything else. It's a great place just to kind of paste articles and diagrams and so on. And then I think offline we can plan around the next steps and future meetings in terms of an agenda and a timing and process around this. I know there are a lot of people who would love to have been on this call who either didn't make it or didn't know about it. And so I really think this has got the potential to grow and for us to really make huge progress over the coming months. So really, thank you so much for all the contributions that you've made. I think this has been one of the best meetings of the month for me personally, just kind of really hearing such inspiring stories about where we've come from and what's happening and where we're going. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey, Shaun, are we, or I guess we'll communicate in email, but you were thinking about setting up a Discord?
Yeah, so I think we'll use the Cosmos Discord, and we'll create a channel there and then invite everyone to that.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Shaun, for setting this up.
Thanks so much, Shaun. This was great.
Yeah, thanks, Shaun.
Nice to meet everybody. Will, nice to see you again.
Yeah.